Let's make my Homeland Stars quilt pattern, which is perfect for those leftover layer cake 10-inch squares. For this pattern, you will need 3 blue 10-inch squares, or you can use 12 5-inch squares if you prefer, 2 white and 2 red 10-inch squares, or you can supplement them with 2.5-inch strips. And you will also need 6 10-inch squares for your background. With your 3 blue 10-inch squares and 3 background 10-inch squares, you will subcut them into 5-inch squares. Then with your background 5-inch square, on the wrong side of the fabric, you will draw a 45-degree line with a fabric marking tool. Then with your background and blue 5-inch square, you will place them right sides together and sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance on both sides of that line you just drew. Then afterwards, you will cut on that line with fabric scissors or a rotary cutter to form 2 half-square triangles. Now you may need to trim your half-square triangles down to a 4.5-inch square. Then all you have to do is repeat this step until you have formed a total of 24 half-square triangles. Next, with your red and white 10-inch squares, you will subcut them into 6 red 2.5-inch by 8.5-inch rectangles and 6 white 2.5-inch by 8.5-inch rectangles. Once again, feel free to substitute jelly roll scraps if you prefer. Lastly, with the remaining background 10-inch squares, you will subcut them down to a total of 12 4.5-inch squares. Then with those 2.5-inch strips in red and white, you will alternate between each color and sew 4 of your strips together to create a candy cane-like block that will measure as a 8.5-inch square. Then you'll just repeat this step until you've made a total of 3 quilt blocks. Now that all of your blocks are complete, you will take 1 stripy block for the center, 4 background 4.5-inch squares for your corners, and then you're going to fill in the rest with your blue half-square triangles until you have formed a star-shaped block. Then as always, you will sew your blocks together to complete your star quilt block, which will measure as a 16.5-inch square. Then all you have to do is repeat this step until you've made a total of 3 quilt blocks. Once all of your blocks are made, you will sew them together into a row and feel free to rotate them around. I will actually be rotating that middle block. And here is what my Homeland Stars table runner looks like all complete. For the backing, I am using a coordinated print from Sharon Holland's Kindred collection. And as for the thread choice, I'm going to go with linen by Glide Threads for the top. And for the bottom, I'm actually going to use a leftover bobbin thread that is almost the same color as the backing. And here is what my table runner looks like all quilted. This pattern will yield you a 16-inch by 48-inch table runner. And the thread choices was risky, yet it came out amazing, if I don't say so myself. Now, normally when you mix threads, you don't want to do a light and a dark, just in case that bobbin thread pops up towards the top, or vice versa. But this came out really nice. But if you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.